The universe, as most species understood it, was a place of careful balance. Every civilization that had ever reached the stars, every empire, every republic, every hive mind, every collective, had learned the same fundamental truth within the first century of space travel. You do not fight the Vorrkai. The Vorrkai were not a species. They were a force, a reckoning. A word whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy like a prayer you hoped would never be answered. They were 12 feet tall on average, built from layers of dense bioceramic muscle that could stop conventional plasma rounds. Their skin was a deep charcoal black, laced with bioluminescent veins that pulsed red when they were angry, and the Vorrkai were almost always angry. They had 4 arms, each ending in 6-fingered hands with retractable claws that could puncture grade 7 titanium plating. Their eyes were compound, like insects, giving them a full 340-degree field of vision, and they could see in ultraviolet, infrared, and what xenobiologists had labeled deep spectrum, a sensory range that let them detect electrical impulses through solid walls. They had conquered 214 star systems in 600 years. They had wiped out 31 sentient species completely, not enslaved them, not displaced them, but erased them. Down to the last DNA strand. Down to the last carved stone. Down to the last signal floating through space. The Vorrkai believed that the galaxy was a garden, and weeds had to be pulled completely or they grew back. The Galactic Compact, an alliance of 42 species spanning 3 spiral arms of the Milky Way, had tried everything. They had tried diplomacy in the early years. The Vorrkai had eaten the diplomats. Not metaphorically. Literally eaten them, processed them, and sent back the digested remains in sealed containers with a note that said, "Your kind produces insufficient nutrients. Do not send more." They had tried economic sanctions. The Vorrkai did not participate in the galactic economy. They took what they wanted. They had tried military force. 42 species, pooling their greatest warships, their best soldiers, their most advanced weapons. The combined compact fleet, 14,000 warships, had engaged a Vorrkai raiding force of 800 vessels at the Battle of Kareth Station and lost 11,000 ships in 6 hours. The remaining 3,000 had fled. The Vorrkai had pursued them for fun. The compact had lost 3 entire fleets this way. They had tried biological weapons. The Vorrkai's immune system was so advanced that their bodies treated foreign pathogens as food and incorporated them into their own biology, becoming stronger. They had tried psychological warfare. The Vorrkai experienced something like amusement at this. They sent back recordings of their soldiers laughing. And then, 47 years ago, something happened that changed everything. Humanity arrived. The first human ship to encounter a Vorrkai vessel was a science exploration frigate called the ISS Meridian, captained by a woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist from New Mexico who had spent 15 years studying alien microorganisms in the outer rings of Saturn. She was not a military officer. She had no weapons beyond a standard defensive shield array and 2 laser point defense turrets designed to deflect micrometeorites. The Vorrkai ship that found her was a single scout vessel, the alien equivalent of a tugboat. Even their smallest ships dwarfed human construction by a factor of 8. Standard Vorrkai protocol for encountering a new species: broadcast a dominance signal, evaluate the response, determine if the species was worth enslaving or simply needed to be destroyed, proceed accordingly. They broadcast the dominance signal. Elena Vasquez received it, spent 3 days decoding it with her team, and broadcast back a greeting in 17 different mathematical sequences, a universal peace signal, and an invitation to share biological data. The Vorrkai scout commander, a young officer named Grathvel, looked at the tiny human ship with its cheerful blinking lights and its enthusiastic peace signals and felt something he hadn't felt in years: curiosity. He sent a message to Compact Relay Station Kareth 7, which humanity had not yet joined, flagging the new species for evaluation. The message read, "New species discovered. Primitive. Single vessel, minimal armament, no apparent awareness of galactic hierarchy. Designation, unknown. Status, evaluate for labor potential or elimination." Then Grathvel did something unexpected. He opened a channel. Elena answered. The conversation lasted 6 hours. At the end of it, Grathvel filed a secondary report that confused everyone who read it for years afterward. It said, "The new species speaks openly of their limitations. They acknowledge their primitiveness without shame. They ask questions about our biology with what I can only describe as genuine excitement. They are either completely insane or they are not afraid of us. I am not certain which possibility is more concerning." Humanity was formally introduced to the Galactic Compact 3 years later, sponsored by the Ithrani, a species of tall, silver-skinned beings who communicated partly through bioluminescent skin patterns and who had a reputation for taking in strays. The Ithrani had encountered humans twice before Grathvel's report and had privately concluded that humanity was, in the words of their chief xenologist, fascinatingly unaware of how dangerous the galaxy is. Ambassador Kenji Tanaka represented Earth at the Compact Council. He was 52 years old, gray-haired, soft-spoken, and had spent 30 years as a United Nations mediator before being selected for this role. He sat in the council chamber on Compact Central Station, a structure so large it had its own gravity generators and weather systems, and listened politely as 42 species explained the situation with the Vorrkai. The Dorvith, a species of crab-like beings who communicated through claw clicks translated by AI, explained that the Vorrkai had destroyed their outer colonies 20 years ago. They had lost 400 million people. The Selmari, beings of crystalline structure who were among the oldest species in the Compact, explained that they had lost 2 entire star systems to Vorrkai expansion and now existed only on 3 remaining worlds, down from 17. The Thervani, a warm-blooded avian species, explained that they no longer permitted their young to leave their home planet because they feared a Vorrkai raid might destroy their generation ships. Each species spoke with carefully controlled emotion. This was the galactic way. Dignity and suffering. Composure and disaster. The galaxy had learned, over millions of years, that visible emotional distress in a council setting was considered weakness. Kenji Tanaka listened to all of it. Then he asked a single question. Where are the Vorrkai now? The Compact Council was briefly confused. The Selmari Elder, a being who had been alive for 4,000 years, tilted her crystalline head. They are currently consolidating their hold on the Tharvan cluster, she said. Approximately 340 light-years from your home system. Kenji nodded slowly. Are they heading toward us? Eventually, the Selmari Elder said. You're small. They will reach you in approximately 80 to 100 Earth years at their current rate of expansion. This is why we are introducing you to the Compact now. You will want to. I want to propose something, Kenji said. The chamber went quiet. I want to propose a joint military operation. A strike force. Combined compact species, working together with human advisory and combat support. The silence stretched longer. Then the Dorvith ambassador clicked his claws in a rapid pattern. The AI translation read, with respect, Ambassador, the combined compact fleet has engaged the Vorrkai 14 times. We have lost every engagement. What makes you believe? Because you've been fighting them the way they want to be fought, Kenji said. Another silence. We fight them in space, Kenji continued. Large fleet engagements. Massive ship formations. Huge battles. They're better than you at that kind of fight. They're bigger, they're stronger, they have better armor. He paused. We don't fight like that. The Thervani ambassador ruffled her feathers. How do humans fight? Kenji smiled. It was a very small smile. The kind of smile that, if you knew human history, would have made you very nervous. Close, he said. We fight very, very close. The Compact gave humanity provisional military partnership status 3 weeks later, not because they believed the humans could make a difference, but because they had run out of other options and the Vorrkai were currently moving toward the Helveth system, which contains 6 Compact member worlds and approximately 11 billion people of various species. The human military attaché who arrived at Compact Central Station 6 weeks after Kenji's proposal was a woman named General Sarah Okafor. She was 5 feet 4 inches tall. She weighed, in Earth standard, about 135 pounds. She arrived with a staff of 12 people, all in simple gray uniforms with small American flags on their shoulders and a patch that the universal translator had some difficulty with, a skull with a crossed sword and lightning bolt, and words in English that translated roughly as, "Death is certain. The timing is not." The Compact officers who met her at the docking bay had been told to expect a human military leader. They had expected something large, perhaps. Something visually imposing. The Vorrkai were imposing. Even the Thervani, the smallest compact military species, stood 6 feet tall. General Okafor walked off the shuttle, looked around the docking bay with calm brown eyes, shook the hand of the Compact liaison officer, a Dorvith named Kroth who communicated through his AI translator with claw clicks, and said, "Nice station. Good structural integrity. I noticed 6 potential breach points on the approach, but they're all in low-traffic areas, so you're probably fine." Kroth looked at his security chief. His security chief, a veteran Thervani soldier with 40 years of service, looked back at him. Neither of them had ever analyzed the station for breach points. They'd assumed it was secure. It took the compact security team 9 hours to find the 6 breach points General Okafor had mentioned. She had been on the station for 11 minutes at that point. The first meeting between General Okafor and the Compact Joint Military Council took place in a secure briefing room on level 40 of the station. 14 species were represented. She was given a translation implant, standard compact tech, and a briefing on every known Vorrkai engagement in the past 50 years. She read all of it in 4 hours. Then she asked for more. Specifically, she asked for the ground-level data, the individual battles, the after-action reports, the casualty counts not just by ship but by infantry engagement. The compact staff were confused. Almost all compact warfare was space-based, fleet-on-fleet. Ground warfare, in the compact's experience, was rare and mostly involved sieges. They handed over what they had. General Okafor read those files in 3 hours. Then she sat back in her chair, put her fingertips together, and stared at the ceiling for a long moment. "They've never fought a ground war," she said. Compact Admiral Vethsar, a massive Thulian with dark blue scales and 4 combat medals, looked at her. "The Vorrkai conduct planetfall raids, General." "They? Not raids," she said. "Routes. They come down, they kill everything in their path, they take what they want, they leave. That's not a ground war. That's a massacre." She looked at him. "Have they ever had to hold ground? Have they ever had to fight for a building? Hold a corridor? Dig in and defend a position while someone was actively trying to kill them from all sides?" Vethsar considered this. "The Vorrkai's superiority in direct engagement has meant they haven't," she said. "No one's ever forced them into close quarters and made them stay there." She stood up and walked to the holographic display of the Vorrkai's current position in the Tharvan cluster. "That's their gap. They don't know what it is yet. But it's there." She turned back to the room. "I need to show you something," she said. "I need to show you what humanity has been doing for the last 6,000 years. She pulled up a file. The room filled with holographic images. Historical footage, re-rendered in high definition by human historical preservation AIs. Battles. Not space battles. Ground battles. Humans fighting humans across 6,000 years of recorded history. The council watched in silence as the images shifted, from ancient armies with bronze swords to medieval sieges to the mechanized horror of the 20th century's world wars to the guerrilla campaigns of the 21st century to the precision urban combat of the 22nd. The Tharvani ambassador, a civilian observer named Telvi, said quietly to his aide, "These images, are these from their history? Their own kind fighting each other?" His aide nodded. Telvi watched a clip of a World War II beach landing, thousands of humans charging into withering fire, falling, dying, and the ones behind them not stopping, not turning back, climbing over the bodies of the fallen and pressing forward into the fire. "How many of them died in this engagement?" he asked. His aide consulted the data. Approximately 2,500 killed in the first few hours. The engagement lasted several months. Total casualties across the entire campaign. "And they kept going," Telvi said. It was not a question. He had eyes. He could see the footage. "They kept going after 2,500 died in hours." "Yes." Telvi was quiet for a moment. "What kind of species does this to itself?" His aide didn't answer. General Okafor's presentation continued for another 2 hours. When it was done, the room was very quiet. Then Admiral Vethsar said, "What are you proposing, General?" Sarah Okafor looked at him with those calm brown eyes. "I'm proposing we give the Vorrkai a ground war," she said. "A real one. The kind they've never had." She paused. "I'm proposing we send in special forces. Before we talk about what the special forces did to the Vorrkai, you need to understand what they were. Not what the Compact thought they were. Not what the Vorrkai thought they were, in those first confused hours of contact. What they actually were, what had made them, what had shaped them, what 6,000 years of human warfare had distilled down into these specific men and women. The unit was called Ghost Actual. It was not a standard designation. Most human special operations units had long formal names: SEAL Teams, Delta Force, SAS, MARSOC, Rangers, names with history and tradition and weight. Ghost Actual had been formed 11 years before humanity's introduction to the Compact, as part of a classified program called Project Ironveil, in response to a question asked by a think tank of human military strategists. If humanity ever encounters an adversary that is physically superior in every measurable category, stronger, faster, more durable, better sensed, how do we fight it? The answer they'd come up with was not build better weapons. The answer was build better humans. Not through genetic modification. Not through cybernetic enhancement, though some of that came later. Through training. Through the most brutal, comprehensive, psychologically sophisticated training program in human history. The idea was simple in concept and monstrous in execution. Take the best of humanity's existing special operations forces, the ones who had already survived the selection processes that broke most people, and break them again. Rebuild them from the ground up. Push them past every limit they thought they had. Teach them things that had no name yet. Train them until the training itself felt like combat, until combat felt routine, until they could function, think, plan, decide, act, in conditions that would cause psychological collapse in almost any other human being. Iron Veil training was 3 years long. Selection alone, the initial phase before actual training even began, lasted 8 months and had a 94% washout rate. That meant for every 100 of the best soldiers in human history who entered selection, 94 left. Most left voluntarily, and a few were removed for medical reasons, and a very small number simply sat down one day in the middle of an exercise and did not get up, not because they were physically broken but because the mind, that marvelous human instrument, had reached its absolute edge and chosen very quietly to stop. The ones who made it through selection entered training. By the end of 3 years, Ghost Actual had 48 graduates in its first class. These were the people General Okafor was talking about. Captain Marcus Webb was 34 years old, 6 feet 1 inch tall, and built like someone had taken a working ranch hand and spent 15 years making him more efficient. He had sandy brown hair cut military short, blue eyes that his mother had always called, the kind that look like they're doing math even when you're sleeping, and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his jawline from a training accident in year 2 that had put him in the hospital for 2 weeks and back in training in 3. He was from Tulsa, Oklahoma. His father had been a pipe welder. His mother had taught 4th grade. He had 2 younger sisters, both of whom thought he worked in logistics. He had been the top graduate of Ghost Actual's first class. His file, the classified parts of it, the parts that existed only in vaults with triple encrypted access, contained a list of things Marcus Webb was able to do that no official military standard recognized because no official military standard had ever imagined needing to quantify them. He could navigate by stars in any hemisphere of Earth and, after 6 months of cross-training with Ethrani navigators, had demonstrated the ability to adapt this skill to alien star systems with a 97% accuracy rate. He could hold his breath for 4 minutes and 40 seconds under controlled conditions, longer under certain field conditions that he declined to explain. He had been buried alive in a training exercise, sealed in a box 6 feet underground, alone in the dark with 20 hours of air, and had been found, when retrieved, calmly working through a mathematical proof in the dirt with his finger. He said later that it kept his mind occupied. He spoke 5 human languages and had picked up functional Ethrani Sign Language in 11 weeks. He was currently working on Dorvath click speech. He had a sense of humor that appeared at unexpected moments and disappeared just as fast. And he had, according to the psychological profile buried deepest in his classified file, the rarest of all human qualities in a combat operator. Genuine equanimity. Not the performed calm of someone who had learned to suppress fear. Actual, documented neurological equanimity, the ability to process threat information without triggering the adrenaline cascade that narrowed focus and reduced decision-making capacity. His brain, under fire, ran cooler than at rest. His evaluating psychologist had written, "Subject does not suppress fear response. Subject appears to not experience threat stimuli the same way most humans do. Recommend further study." Further study had concluded, "Some people are just built different. We don't know why. Train him and be grateful." Sergeant First Class Diana D. Reyes was 31, 5 feet 8, and the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately know where every exit was, where every person was standing and which one of them was lying. She was from San Antonio, Texas. She had grown up in a neighborhood where reading the room was a survival skill, had joined the Army at 18 because it was that or a future she didn't want, had cycled through Ranger School, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and 3 combat deployments in the chaos of the post-collapse Middle East theater before someone noticed that her after-action reports read differently than other soldiers. Most soldiers described what they did. Reyes described what she was thinking while she did it. In real time. While being shot at. She had been recruited into Iron Veil selection at 25. She had not only survived selection but had, at one point during the 7th month, when she and the 3 other remaining candidates were in the middle of a 72-hour sleep deprivation navigation exercise, stopped, turned to the evaluator who was shadowing them and said, "The next checkpoint is a trap. There's a simulated ambush set up at the ravine. We should go around." The evaluator had said nothing. Reyes had taken the group around the ravine. There had been a simulated ambush at the ravine. When asked afterward how she knew, she said, "The GPS route they gave us was too direct. Nobody gives you a clean route in training. I figured they'd put something on the most obvious path." She paused. "Also, I could smell the evaluators. They use the same detergent. You can smell it if the wind's right." She was Ghost Actual's top intelligence analyst and second in command. She had a daughter named Lily who was 7 years old and lived with Reyes's sister in San Antonio. Lily thought her mom was a teacher on a long research trip. Staff Sergeant James Jimmy Park was 29, 5 feet 10, quiet in the way that old mountains are quiet, not empty, just very, very still. He was from Portland, Oregon by way of Seoul, South Korea, where he had been born and lived until his parents emigrated when he was 4. He was Ghost Actual's primary combat medic and secondary demolitions expert. The combination was more common in Ghost than in any other unit. The thinking was that the person most committed to keeping everyone alive should also be the person most knowledgeable about what destroyed things. Jimmy's hands were extraordinary. This was universally agreed upon by everyone who had ever watched him work. In surgery, in the field, under fire, in the dark, in temperatures so cold that most people lost fine motor control, Jimmy's hands moved with a precision that his colleagues found slightly unsettling. He could perform a field appendectomy with a standard kit in 11 minutes. He could set a shaped charge with a 6-second detonation delay while being shot at, without looking at his hands, while maintaining a conversation to keep the wounded soldier next to him conscious and calm. He could and had stitched a 3-inch gash in his own thigh using a mirror and a field kit and rated the experience afterward as uncomfortable but manageable. He played the guitar. He had carried a compact, foldable guitar, custom-built, weighing less than 2 pounds, on every deployment since training. The rest of the unit had complained about the extra weight exactly once. He had played for 8 hours straight during a weather delay on a mountain in a foreign country so cold that the moisture in their breath froze, and by hour 3 nobody was complaining about the guitar anymore. There were 48 of them in total in Ghost Actual's operational roster. Master Sergeant Tony "Tone" Alvarez from El Paso, the team's communications and electronic warfare specialist, who could build a functional long-range radio from components found in a hardware store and had once, on a bet, hacked a military satellite from a hotel room using a laptop and 2 energy drinks. He was 36, stocky, perpetually cheerful in a way that was either genuine or so perfectly maintained that the difference didn't matter. Sergeant First Class Rachel Kim from Chicago, the team's sniper and secondary intelligence analyst. She was 30, quiet, precise, and had logged the longest confirmed kill shot in Ghost Actual history during a training exercise at a range so extreme that the target's evaluators had initially assumed the shot was from a different position. It wasn't. Kim had simply calculated the math differently than everyone else. She spent her downtime reading astronomy books. Warrant Officer Big Sam Howell from rural Georgia, Ghost Actual's heavy weapons and engineering specialist. He was 6 feet 4, genuinely, honestly enormous and deceptively gentle in the manner of people who have nothing to prove. He could carry a standard infantry combat load plus 40% additional equipment weight and still maintain full operational pace. He had once, during a training exercise, carried a 200-pound wounded colleague 3 miles up a mountain without stopping. And 42 others, each of them a world unto themselves, each shaped by some combination of extraordinary natural capacity and the grinding, relentless 3-year forge of Iron Veil training into something that was still completely human, still full of fears and jokes and memories and the need to call home, but that functioned, under the specific circumstances of violent close-quarters combat, at a level the rest of humanity could not quite follow. They were not superhuman. They were super-trained humans. The difference mattered. General Okafor briefed them in a converted cargo bay on the human deployment vessel ISS Unbroken, 3 days out from Compact Central Station, heading toward the Tharvan cluster at maximum warp. The cargo bay had been set up as a mission briefing room, folding chairs in neat rows, holographic display in the front, all 48 members of Ghost Actual sitting with the loose, alert posture of people who were comfortable and completely paying attention at the same time. Okafor stood at the front, hands in her pockets, and gave them the honest version. "The Vorrkai are 12 feet tall," she said. "They weigh between 800 and 1,200 pounds. They have 4 arms and each of those arms is strong enough to bend structural steel. Their skin can stop small arms fire at standard calibers. Your sidearm rounds will bounce off them. Their vision is better than yours, their hearing is better than yours, and they can sense your nervous system's electrical field from about 15 feet if conditions are right." She paused. "They have conquered 214 star systems in 600 years. No species in the galaxy has ever successfully fought them in direct combat." She let that sit for a moment. Questions so far? Sergeant Alvarez raised his hand. Have they ever fought us? No. Good, he said. Then they don't know what they're in for. A small ripple of something moved through the room. Not quite laughter. More like agreement. What's the mission? Marcus Webb asked from the front row. General Okafor pulled up the holographic display. The Tharvan cluster filled the room, a dozen star systems, 6 inhabited worlds, 1 currently under active Vorrkai assault. The Vorrkai are currently in the process of planetfall on Tharvan 4, she said. 11 million compact civilians, mostly Dorvath and Selmari, are on the surface. The combined compact fleet tried to stop the Vorrkai fleet in space. They lost 40% of the engagement force in 2 hours. The remaining vessels retreated. She looked around the room. There is no fleet coming to save Tharvan 4. The compact is already writing it off as lost. The room was very still. The Vorrkai have landed approximately 40,000 ground troops on the surface. They are conducting what they call purification sweeps, systematic elimination of the population, sector by sector. At their current rate, the entire planet will be eliminated in 16 days. She paused. We are going to Tharvan 4. We are going to land in the middle of 40,000 Vorrkai warriors. And we are going to make them stop. 48 of us, Jimmy Park said. Not a question. Just verifying. 48 of you, Okafor confirmed. Plus the support elements. Total human ground force including logistics and signals. 73 people. The room sat with that number. Ma'am, said Rachel Kim carefully, that's 40,000 of them and 73 of us. Yes. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the math. You are. Kim nodded once. Okay, she said. What's the terrain? And that was it. No protest. No expressions of disbelief. Just, okay, what's the terrain? General Okafor, who had commanded soldiers for 25 years, who had stood in rooms and given bad news and watched people process it in every possible human way, felt something she rarely felt, a clean, uncomplicated pride. Urban, she said. Tharvan IV's capital city, Karavel. Population 5 million before the Vorrkai landed. The Vorrkai are advancing from the perimeter inward. The civilian population is concentrated in the inner districts. We will insert into Sector 7 here. She pointed. Between the Vorrkai advance line and the civilian core. We'll be between them and their target, Reyes said. Yes. So they'll have to come through us to get to the civilians. Yes. Reyes looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at her. Caro, Marcus said quietly. It was a word from Ghost Actual's internal shorthand. Their unit had developed an entire private vocabulary over 3 years of training together. Caro meant roughly, let's go, no more talking, it's time. It was borrowed from a word one of the instructors had used years ago on a particularly brutal training day, when he'd looked at the surviving candidates and said simply, Caro, a word from his grandmother's language that meant something like now we move. The word had stuck. Reyes nodded. HFY, she said. From this moment I am ready. Another piece of their private vocabulary. The words were from a language 2 of their colleagues spoke, adapted into something that meant more than it said, not just I am ready but I have already decided. There is nothing left to decide. I am already in motion. HFY, the room said. 48 voices, not quite in unison, not performed, just natural, the way people breathe the same air in a small space. Okafor looked at them. Weapons load is in Bay 4, she said. We insert in 36 hours. Tharvan 4 smelled like burning metal and something sweeter underneath, the atmosphere processors still running on automatic, still producing their mix of gases suited to Dorvath and Selmari biology, even as the city they served was being systematically destroyed. Ghost Actual inserted in 3 separate drop pods, each pod small enough to slip through the Vorrkai sensor net by riding the debris field created by the compact's failed fleet engagement. A screen of destroyed ship hulls and scattered equipment that cluttered the planet's orbital approach enough to mask 3 small radar-absorbing pods from the Vorrkai's orbital detection systems. Marcus Webb's pod hit the surface in an abandoned warehouse in Sector 7 at 0300 local time. He was moving before the pod finished venting its heat. The warehouse had been a manufacturing facility once, the Dorvath equivalent of a machine shop, built low and wide to accommodate beings with 4 legs and a horizontal body structure. The floor was scattered with abandoned tools and overturned work tables. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim red, which Marcus's night vision equipment amplified to crystal clarity. He moved to the primary door in 3 seconds, back against the wall, checked his corners. Clear. Ghost Actual, all elements report, he said into his comm. Rez's voice, Ghost 2 down and good. 8 personnel. We're in the Eastern Residential Block, Sector 7, grid reference 447. Park's voice, Ghost 3, down with a bump, 1 twisted ankle non-mission impacting. Warehouse District, grid 392. Copy all, Marcus said. Form up on primary grid 420, the transit station. Move quiet, move fast. They moved. The transit station had been Sector 7's main transportation hub, a large open structure with a vaulted ceiling and 6 platform bays, built for the maglev trains that connected the city's districts. The trains had stopped running 12 hours ago when the power to the rail network had been cut, by the Vorrkai or by someone trying to deny them a rapid transport option. It wasn't clear yet. Ghost Actual assembled in the station's maintenance tunnels, below the main floor. 20 minutes after insertion, all 48 combat operators were present and accounted for, plus the support elements. The communications specialists, the logistics team, the 2 Ithrani liaison officers who were the Compact's representatives on this operation and who had insisted on going in with the humans despite Okafor's suggestion that they stay in orbit. The Ithrani had a saying that translated approximately as, "We will not ask others to walk a road we are not willing to walk ourselves." The liaison officers, a male named Sethran and a female named Vorrkai, were not soldiers. They were diplomats. But they were here, in the maintenance tunnel under a transit station in a city that was being destroyed, carrying the lightweight compact issue sidearms that were better than nothing and wearing the same thermal dispersal suits as the rest of the team. Marcus had looked at them when they arrived at the assembly point and said, "You didn't have to be here." Sethran, who was 6 feet tall and silver-skinned and moved with the careful grace of someone who knew exactly how alien they appeared to most species, said, "We are aware." "Okay," Marcus said. "Stay close. Do what I say when I say it. Don't touch any human equipment without asking. Don't shoot anything unless you absolutely have to because the Vorrkai will hear it." "We will," Vorrkai said. Her translator gave her words a slight musical quality. "We have instructions for ourselves as well." "What instructions?" "To watch," she said. "To observe what you do and how you do it. The Council, the entire Galactic Compact, is watching this operation through our biosensors." She touched the small device at her temple. "They have never seen humans fight before." "Not truly." Marcus absorbed this. "No pressure," Alvarez murmured from behind him. HFY, Reyes said and unfolded her tactical map. The situation on the surface was worse than the orbital intelligence had suggested. Reyes laid it out in the maintenance tunnel while Jimmy and 2 others patched the 1 twisted ankle and checked everyone's equipment. "The Vorrkai advance is not a single line," she said, pointing to the holographic map that her wrist unit projected at low intensity in the dim tunnel. "It's a series of sweeping arms. Like this." She traced the patterns. "They send groups of warriors, between 50 and 200 per group, in overlapping arcs through each district. They clear each building, their definition of clear being eliminate all occupants. Then they mark it and move to the next. The groups are close enough to support each other but not so close that a hit on one immediately engages the others." "Methodical," Kim said. "Very. They've done this before. They know how to purge a city." Reyes's voice was flat and professional. She had a way of discussing horrible things in this tone, not cold, not unfeeling but held back, the emotion carefully parked somewhere she could access later when the work was done. "The leading arm of their advance is approximately 2 kilometers from our position. At their current rate, they'll reach this sector in about 3 hours. What's between them and us? Abandoned buildings mostly. Some Dorvath civilian groups still hiding in structures. We're picking up heat signatures from our sensors, maybe 3,000 to 4,000 people in the immediate zone. They're scared, they're not moving, and right now that's the only thing keeping the Vorrkai from finding them. The Vorrkai are sweeping systematically but slowly because they're dealing with some resistance from Dorvath military remnants in Sector 4. How much resistance? Small unit. Maybe 40 Dorvath soldiers. They're fighting hard but they're being ground down. Probably another 2 hours before they're gone." Marcus looked at the map for a long moment. "The civilians," he said. "Can we move them?" "Not fast enough. The tunnel network under this city is extensive. I've been looking at it since we got the data package. If we had 4 hours and a way to guide people through without noise, maybe. But 3 hours with 3,000 to 4,000 people, including elderly and children. We can't move them," he said. "No. So we keep the Vorrkai from reaching them. That's the mission." He nodded once. Looked at the map again. "How many Vorrkai in the leading sweep? The arm heading for us? Based on heat signatures, Approximately 200. Okay, Marcus said. We don't fight 200 Vorrkai. We don't fight any Vorrkai head-to-head if we can help it. We're going to do what humans do. Which is? Sethran asked from the back of the tunnel. Marcus looked at him. We're going to make the 200 think there are thousands of us. We're going to make this section of the city the worst 2 kilometers they've ever tried to cross. We're going to make them slow down, get confused, pull in their other sweep arms to reinforce this one, and while they're all looking at us, we're going to move the civilians. Reyes looked at him. You just said we can't move the civilians in 3 hours. We can't move 3,000 to 4,000 people in 3 hours, he said. But if we slow the Vorrkai down enough. How much do we need to slow them? 8 hours. She looked at the map. At 48 of them. At 200 Vorrkai. HFY, she said. The first Vorrkai warrior to see a human in combat was a sweep leader named Varketh. Varketh was a veteran of 11 campaigns. He had fought Dorvath soldiers, Thervani warriors, even a small squad of Selmari defenders once, crystalline beings who were harder to kill than they looked. He had never been afraid in combat. The concept was foreign to him in the way that colorblindness is foreign to someone with perfect vision. He knew it existed, had heard of it, but had no personal reference for what it felt like. The sweep was going well. His 200 warriors moved through Sector 7's empty streets with the practiced efficiency of creatures who had done this 200 times on 200 worlds. The buildings here were low and wide, Dorvath architecture. Doorways sized for beings with horizontal body structures, windows high up on the walls, interior spaces open and unobstructed. Easy to clear. His warriors moved in groups of 20, each group covering a block, leapfrogging forward. Then Warrior 3rd Grade HFY on the western edge of the sweep, stopped transmitting. Varketh noticed the silence on the comm immediately. HFY, report. Nothing. He sent 2 warriors to check. They also stopped transmitting. Varketh felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. He sent a full squad of 10 to investigate. 8 of them stopped transmitting within 90 seconds. 2 came back. They were not injured. There were no projectile wounds, no plasma burns, no signs of any of the weapons the compact species typically used. One of them had a single very clean cut across the back of his right knee, between 2 plates of his bioceramic armor, in a gap less than 2 centimeters wide. The cut had severed the tendons, dropping him instantly. The other warrior had 2 small puncture wounds in his neck between the collar of his armor and his jaw. Whatever had made the wounds had done so from above. What attacked you? Varketh demanded. His warrior said, I don't know. I never saw it. Varketh had never heard a Vorrkai warrior say that before. He pulled his entire sweep group together, all 200 warriors, into a defensive formation and called for support. 60 more warriors from the adjacent sweep arm moved to join him. They were now 260 Vorrkai, consolidated, moving carefully through the streets of Sector 7. Marcus Webb watched them from the rooftop of a building 400 meters away through a thermal scope. They consolidated, he said into his comm. Reyes, that's your play. Copy, Reyes said from a completely different position. 3 minutes later, the improvised explosive devices that Ghost Actual's engineering team had spent 2 hours placing in the drainage channels under the streets of Sector 7 went off. Not all at once. That would have been direct. Obvious. A show of force. Instead, they went off in sequence at 15-second intervals, starting at the far end of the formation and walking forward. Boom, 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 each one close enough to the Vorrkai formation to be threatening, far enough to be non-lethal. The point wasn't to kill them. The point was to make 260 Vorrkai warriors freeze, look around, try to understand a threat they couldn't see from a source they couldn't locate. Now they're confused, Marcus said. Jimmy lights. From 4 different positions across Sector 7, James Park and 3 other operators triggered the devices they'd spent the first hour of the operation setting up. Repurposed industrial lighting rigs pulled from the manufacturing district, now mounted on automated rotation systems, throwing wide beams of intense white light across the streets and building faces. Not aimed at the Vorrkai. Aimed around them, at angles that created moving shadows, that made the empty streets look full of movement. The Vorrkai had excellent vision. That was now working against them. They could see everything clearly, the shadows moving, the light sources cycling, the empty streets that visually kept suggesting there were things in them. Their 340-degree vision, designed to let them detect threats in all directions, was now processing threat signals from all directions simultaneously. Contact north, one of Varketh's warriors said. Negative, the north is clear, another said. I'm reading electrical signals from the east. West, there's movement to the west. Varketh held up a fist. Stop. Wait. His warriors stopped. The lights cycled. A shadow moved. And then, very quietly from somewhere above and to the left, a sound. It was a human voice. Clear, calm, speaking in the Vorrkai language. Perfect pronunciation, no translation lag, the words spoken like someone who had been practicing for a while. Good evening, the voice said. Every Vorrkai warrior in the street looked up. They couldn't find the source. You're in our city now, the voice said. We want you to understand something. The species you've been fighting, they're not us. You've been making a mistake. This is a human sector. And you are now in a war with humans. Vorrkai identified the direction the voice was coming from, northeast, elevated, possibly a roof. He signaled 4 of his best warriors who leaped for the building in question, climbing the face with their clawed hands in 4 seconds. Vorrkai were extraordinary climbers. They reached the roof. It was empty. The voice had been a recording, triggered remotely, speaker mounted and abandoned. Report, Vorrkai said. Empty, his warriors said. But, a pause. Commander, there is a message here. Written on the roof in our script. What does it say? Another pause. Vorrkai could hear something strange in his warrior's voice. Unease. It says, we have been watching you for 2 hours. We know how many you are. We know where you are going. You will not get there. Jich 1. Vorrkai looked at his formation. 260 warriors. Every weapon system active. Every sensor running. Nothing was visible. Nothing at all. He felt the unfamiliar thing in his chest again. This time he recognized it. Caution. Meanwhile, in the tunnel network under the city, Diana Reyes was running. She had a flashlight, a tunnel map, and an earpiece. She was moving at a pace that most humans could not sustain. Not sprinting but close to it, maintaining form, keeping her breathing controlled because in a tunnel this small you needed to move economically or you burned out. The first group of Dorvath civilians she found was 340 people, sheltering in a transit maintenance hub 400 meters from the main station. They were gathered around glow sticks, their version of emergency lighting, and they went very still when the flashlight beam hit them. I'm human, Reyes said and switched on her translator. I'm here to help you move. We have a route through the tunnel network that will take you to the inner districts. It's 2 kilometers and we need to move now. The Dorvath elder in the group, a female, older, her exoskeleton dulled to gray, clicked at her in rapid speech. The translator said, You are one of the human fighters? We heard the explosions. My team is keeping the Vorrkai busy. We have a window. Maybe 6 hours. I need you to move your people. There are children. Elderly. The tunnels are not easy. I know, Reyes said. I'll lead. You'll follow. We go now. The elder looked at her for a moment. This human, this small creature, 5 feet 8, holding a flashlight in the dark underground, speaking with complete certainty about a plan to move 340 people through tunnels while her team held off an alien army overhead. HFY, the elder said, and Reyes blinked, because those weren't the elder's words. The translator was giving her the closest equivalent, and the closest equivalent in Dorvath click speech was apparently the same gesture of irrevocable commitment. Caro, Reyes said. Let's go. Above ground, the battle was evolving in ways that Vorrkai had no framework for. In his 300 years of service, Vorrkai lived long. He had fought 23 species across 14 campaigns. Every single one of them had followed recognizable patterns. They either massed their forces and tried to overwhelm his troops in direct engagement, this never worked, or they tried to hold defensive positions and weather the Vorrkai advance, this delayed the inevitable, or they attempted to evacuate and accepted the loss of ground, this was the sensible option and the Vorrkai respected it, while still pursuing them. No one had ever played with them. That was the only word Vorrkai had for it. The humans were playing. In the first 4 hours of engagement, Vorrkai had lost 19 warriors. This was not a catastrophic number, but it was 17 more than he typically lost in a sector this size. More importantly, he had not seen a single human. Not one. Not clearly, not enough to confirm what he was seeing. He had glimpsed movement. He had found tracks, small, bipedal, widely spaced, they moved fast, that appeared and disappeared in ways that suggested the humans were incredibly comfortable in elevated positions, moving between buildings at heights his warriors found difficult. They moved on rooftops, through windows, through the tunnels. Twice his warriors had found evidence of human passage in the maintenance tunnels, but the humans were always gone by the time they arrived. His 18 remaining losses were from explosive devices, not plasma weapons, not energy weapons, simple chemical reaction explosives that the Vorrkai had not used themselves in 400 years because they had better options, and had therefore not prepared specifically to detect. The humans had placed them everywhere. In doorways. In floors. In the walls of buildings his warriors entered to search. The humans had mined an entire sector in 2 hours. Oh, when? They had arrived after the Vorrkai. The answer, which Vorrkai did not know, was that Ghost Actual had not mined the sector after arriving. They had mined specific locations in 1 hour, based on a predictive model Reyes had built of how the Vorrkai would move through the sector based on their patterns in other areas of the city. She had correctly predicted 80% of their movement choices. Vorrkai called for more support. He requested 3 additional sweep arms, 600 more warriors. His commander, a senior officer named Drathmore, responded, "You have 260 warriors and you are asking for 600 more to handle 1 sector of a purge operation?" "Yes," Vorrkai said. "What species is giving you difficulty?" "They say they are human." A pause on the comm. "We have no data on a species called human." "Nor do I," Vorrkai said. "Send the reinforcement." Captain Marcus Webb, crouched behind a ventilation housing on the roof of a 6-story building in Sector 7 at 0540 local time, watched 600 additional Vorrkai warriors pour into the sector from the northern access route and felt something that was not fear but was in the same family. He calculated for approximately 15 seconds. Then he keyed his comm. "Tone," he said. "Yo," Alvarez said from somewhere below and to the west. "The northern access route. I need it closed." "Define closed." "Impassable for at least 4 hours. Give me 20 minutes. You have 12. Pause. Make it 15 and you've got a deal. 14. Done. 14 minutes later, the 6-story parking structure at the northern access route, which Alvarez had spent the previous hour quietly filling with accelerants from the manufacturing district's storage tanks, which he had correctly identified from the Tharvan 4 municipal maintenance map that Reyes had pulled from the city's public database before insertion, collapsed in a controlled burn that was visible from orbit. No Vorrkai were harmed. The structure had been evacuated of civilians. The collapse was precisely targeted at the structural supports in a sequence designed to fill the access route with debris rather than to kill indiscriminately. But it cut the northern route completely. And it generated a pillar of fire visible for 10 kilometers. Vorrkai looked at it and understood, with cold clarity, that these creatures were not afraid of him. They had just told him where he could not go. On Compact Central Station, 340 light-years away, the Galactic Compact Council watched the biosensor feed from Sethran and Vorrkai in stunned silence. They were watching humans. 48 humans plus support. Against 860 Vorrkai warriors with more on the way. They watched a human move across a rooftop, a single figure, small, fast, something that looked like a rifle slung on their back, crossing open space between 2 buildings via a line strung between them, reaching the other side, dropping through a window, disappearing. 20 seconds later, a Vorrkai warrior searching the building the human had entered emerged from the far side and did not go back in. The council watched. They watched for 3 more hours. Not one human died in those 3 hours. The Dorvath elder who had watched Reyes lead 340 of her people through the tunnel said later, in testimony to a Compact Historical Commission, a year later, that what she remembered most clearly was not the explosions or the lights or the sounds of the Vorrkai confusion. It was the tone of the human woman's voice when she was guiding them through the tunnel. She was talking to them the whole way. Quiet words. Steady. Like someone who was going for a walk, not someone holding the line between them and death. She spoke as if nothing could stop her, the elder said. Not in the way warriors speak when they are angry or afraid and trying not to show it. In the way that water speaks when it is flowing downhill. It does not consider the possibility of stopping. It simply continues. At hour 7 of the engagement, Vorrkai made a decision that he would, in the years that followed, describe as the worst decision of his life. He had 860 warriors in Sector 7. The human sabotage had cost him 31 casualties over 7 hours. Not killed, mostly, but incapacitated in specific ways that suggested a very detailed knowledge of Vorrkai anatomy. The explosive devices had been placed, he now understood, at the junctions of their armor plating. The cuts his warriors kept sustaining were at tendons and nervous system junctions. Someone had studied them. He had still not moved through the sector. He had also, based on the thermal imaging his aerial drones were showing, noticed that the civilian population concentration in the sector's inner zones was decreasing. Something was moving them. Through the tunnels, he suspected, but the tunnels were a maze and his warriors kept finding the wrong branches. He was losing time. And 860 warriors. In one sector of one city. He made the decision to put all 860 warriors in a single mass formation and simply walk through the sector. No more sweeping, no more individual squad movements. A wall of warriors from one side of the sector to the other, every building checked simultaneously, overwhelming the humans' ability to avoid and isolate small groups. He gave the order. 860 Vorrkai warriors formed a line 400 meters wide and began to advance. And Marcus Webb, watching from a rooftop, said into his comm, "They went wall formation. Reyes, how much time do you need?" 2 more hours to get everyone out. "How many people do you still have in the sector?" "About 800. Tell them to get into the lowest tunnels. Deepest sublevel." "Why?" "Because we're about to do something loud." He keyed a different comm channel. "Howell." "Boss," Big Sam Howell said, in the ground floor maintenance room of an industrial building directly in the path of the advancing wall of Vorrkai. "Are you ready?" "I've been ready for 6 hours, Sam said. "I was starting to get bored." "Don't get bored. Get loud. On my mark." He watched the wall of Vorrkai approach on his thermal scope. At 200 meters he said, "Mark." Sam Howell triggered the largest improvised explosive device constructed by human hands in an alien city in recorded history. He had spent 6 hours building it. He was very good at his job. The device did not collapse the building. It did not need to. It needed to do one specific thing: create a pressure wave powerful enough to knock 860 large, armored alien warriors off their feet simultaneously. It did that. The entire western face of the industrial building went outward in a controlled directional blast, channeled by internal baffles Sam had constructed, throwing a wall of hot air and pressure directly at the advancing Vorrkai formation at the precise moment when 860 warriors were in the worst possible position to resist it. Standing upright, moving forward, bodies at full extension. 860 Vorrkai went down. They were not dead. They were not even significantly injured. But they were on the ground, their senses ringing, their 340-degree vision full of smoke and debris for about 90 seconds. 90 seconds is enough time. In that 90 seconds, every member of Ghost Actual who had been in elevated positions across Sector 7 moved. Not toward the Vorrkai. Away from them. Specifically, to the 9 remaining locations in the sector where civilian heat signatures were still showing, and directly into those locations. They moved 800 Dorvath and Selmari civilians into the tunnel network in 11 minutes. When the Vorrkai stood back up and reformed their wall and advanced through the sector, they found it empty. Varketh stood in the middle of Sector 7, 860 warriors around him, and looked at a sector that contained no one. No civilians. No humans. Just abandoned buildings and the echo of footsteps. He filed his report in silence. When his commander Drathmore asked what had happened, Varketh said simply, "They took the civilians out from under us." A long silence from the commander. "How?" "I don't know," Varketh said. "They made us look left. And while we were looking left, they moved everything right." Another silence. "How many humans?" "Unknown. Still unknown." "Varketh," the commander said carefully, "we have lost 62 warriors in one sector. To an unknown number of a species we have no data on. This is unprecedented," Varketh said. "I know. I am sending the full 3rd Strike Division. 12,000 warriors." Varketh absorbed this. "To Sector 7? To the city? I want this species found, cornered, and eliminated. Every human on this planet." Varketh thought about the recording on the rooftop. "We have been watching you for 2 hours." He thought about the empty sector. The precise explosives. The lights. The voice. "Commander," he said. "I want to suggest something." "Speak." "These humans, they fight in a way I have never seen. They do not fight us directly. They make us fight ourselves, fight shadows, fight our own confusion. I think," he paused, "I think we should be careful." Another silence from Drathmore. "Careful," the commander said finally. The word seemed strange in Vorrkai speech. It was not a word they used often. "Varketh, we have 12,000 warriors. They have, how many? Unknown. They are one species new to the galaxy, and their largest vessel in this system is a frigate. They are small, they are lightly armed by our standards, and there are not many of them. Careful is not a Vorrkai word." "Yes, Commander," Varketh said. He looked at the empty sector. "I know," he said. And then something happened that Varketh had not expected. He saw a human. Just one. The human walked out of a doorway across the street, 60 meters away, and stopped. Varketh's warriors froze. You didn't expect, after 7 hours of shadow and absence, for the thing you'd been hunting to simply appear. The human was a man. Not tall, Vorrkai would have said small, but he was revising his definitions of small after the past 7 hours. The human was wearing dark clothing, military equipment, no helmet, short hair, eyes that were doing that thing Vorrkai had heard about from Grathvel's old report, that thing where they seemed to be calculating even when looking at you directly. The human looked at Vorrkai. Vorrkai looked at the human. They were 60 meters apart. The human said in perfect Vorrkai, "I need you to pass a message to whoever commands your fleet." Every warrior in the sector was now looking at this human. 860 warriors with weapons raised, and this one small creature standing in a doorway, arms at his sides. "Tell them," the human said, "that the civilians of this sector are safe. They're beyond your reach. What you're going to do now is leave this planet." Vorrkai stared. "And if we don't?" he said. The human tilted his head slightly. "Then you'll find out what we are when we stop being careful with you," he said. He turned and walked back through the doorway. Vorrkai sent 15 warriors to pursue. They found a tunnel entrance behind the door. The human was gone. Vorrkai stood in the street and thought about what the human had said. "When we stop being careful with you." He thought about 62 warriors in one sector. He thought about 3,000 to 4,000 civilians extracted from under 860 Vorrkai warriors. He thought, this is the careful version. Crosswords Part 6. What the Compact Didn't Know. 2,300 light-years away in a conference room on Earth, General Sarah Okafor was having a different kind of fight. She was on the comm with the Compact Council, who were watching the biosensor feed from Sethran and Vorrkai, and who had spent the last 8 hours moving from astonishment to something that looked, in various alien species, remarkably like fear. "General Okafor," said the Selmari elder, her crystalline form catching the light of the communication array. "We are watching your people." "I know. They are extraordinary," the elder said, with the precision of a species that did not use words carelessly. "But we are concerned." "About what?" "The Vorrkai are sending 12,000 warriors to the city. Your team has 62 casualties of Vorrkai. But your team is 73 people. When 12,000 warriors arrive, we'll adapt," Okafor said. "General." The elder's voice was not unkind. "We have fought the Vorrkai for 400 years. We know them. 12,000 warriors in a single city, in coordinated sweeps, with orbital support if needed." "Do they have orbital support?" Pause. "Not currently deployed. Their ships are." "Then 12,000 ground troops in an urban environment," Okafor said, "is actually not their best option." She pulled up her own copy of the city map. In open terrain, 12,000 Vorrkai warriors are overwhelming. They can spread out, they can surround, they can use their physical advantages in a full direct engagement. She traced the city's layout. Kuravel is a dense urban environment. Wide streets are 30 meters across. Most are narrower. Buildings average 4 to 8 stories. The tunnel network is 400 kilometers of passages, most of them too narrow for Vorrkai to pass without moving single file. She looked up. In this terrain, 12,000 warriors can't be in 12,000 places at once. They have to move in corridors. They have to enter buildings one at a time. They have to come through doors and windows that are designed for beings half their size. The elder was quiet. "Urban combat," Okafor said quietly, "is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how big you are if you can only fit through a door one at a time." She paused. "And if someone's waiting on the other side of that door who has been training for exactly this scenario for 3 years. You prepared for the Vorrkai specifically?" Admiral Vethsar asked, leaning forward in his seat on the comm. "We prepared for an adversary that is physically superior in every measurable category," Okafor said. "We didn't know about the Vorrkai specifically. But the problem set is the same." The room was quiet. "General," the Dorvith ambassador said, clicks rapid and something in the translation that suggested agitation. "There is another matter." "Go ahead." "The Compact has military observers with your team. Sethran and Vorrkai. We are receiving their biosensor data." "I know. We are, the Council has been watching your people. We are noticing something." He paused. His clicks were slower now, more careful. "They are not frightened." "No," Okafor agreed. "We have been watching the sensor data. Biological markers, heart rate, adrenaline, cortisol, all of it is within normal ranges for your people. In some cases, the markers suggest something closer to," he seemed to be searching for the right word, "engagement. Activation. It is the biological state of a predator that has found its prey." "Yes," Okafor said. "This is, General, with respect, Every species we have ever studied fights the Vorrkai in a state of fear. Even species far larger than your own. Even species with more powerful weapons. The biological response to the Vorrkai is fear. I know, Okafor said. We train it out. You train out fear? We train out the disabling aspects of fear, she corrected carefully. The narrowing of focus. The tunnel vision. The decision-making impairment. We don't remove the biological response. That response keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. But we teach people to use it rather than be used by it. She looked at the comm screen. It takes 3 years. And you can only do it with people who have a specific psychological and neurological profile. She paused. Most people can't be trained this way. But some can. And those people are ghost actual, Vethsar said. Yes. The admiral was quiet for a moment. General, he said finally. I have commanded military forces for 40 years. I have fought the Vorrkai twice. I want to tell you something as one officer to another. Go ahead. When I watch your people on the biosensor feed, he said, I feel something I have not felt in a very long time. What? Hope, he said simply. Okafor let that sit. Tell the council to position medical ships at the edge of the Tharvan system, she said. For the civilians my team extracts. And I need authorization for orbital fire support if we need it, not to use, necessarily, just to have. Granted, the elder said immediately. And one more thing, Okafor said. Name it. Get me communications access to the Vorrkai fleet commander, she said. Direct channel. I want to talk to them. Crossswords Part 7. The weight of what they carried. While Okafor negotiated orbital communication access and the council processed what it was seeing, the people doing the actual work were running on hour 12 without sleep. This was not unusual for Ghost Actual. The training had included extended operations without sleep, 36-hour exercises, then 48, then 72, each one designed not just to test endurance but to train the mind to function clearly when the body was exhausted. The mental discipline of running cognitive processes on insufficient rest was something you could, with enough practice, improve. Not eliminate the effects but manage them. Know which degradations to compensate for, which shortcuts to avoid, how to structure decisions so that fatigue didn't push you toward the easy wrong answer instead of the hard right one. Marcus had been awake for 19 hours when he found Jimmy Park in the basement of a building in the Sector 8 transit zone, treating a Dorvith child. The child was maybe 6 years old in human terms. A young Dorvith was a smaller version of the adult, the same horizontal body structure, the same 6 legs, but the exoskeleton not yet fully hardened, still soft in the joints and at the edges. The child had been injured. One of the front legs was bent wrong, clearly broken, and the exoskeleton around the joint was cracked. How it had happened wasn't clear. Maybe from the explosion that Alvarez had set off. Maybe from something earlier. Jimmy was working in near darkness with a small med light, moving with those careful hands. Marcus watched from the doorway for a moment. Jimmy was talking. Not to anyone. There was a Dorvith adult beside the child, a male, presumably the father, who communicated by clicking and whose translator wasn't active in this basement. Jimmy was talking anyway. You're doing great, he was saying. This is going to hurt for a second and then it's going to feel a lot better. You're doing great. You're so tough. He was speaking English, which the child didn't understand. It didn't matter. He set the leg. The child made a sound, alien, clicking-based, clearly pain, and the father flinched and Jimmy said, I know, almost done without looking up, hands moving with absolute precision, splinting the brake with a field kit piece he'd already cut to fit. When he was done he looked up and saw Marcus. How long has the kid been like this? Marcus asked. Few hours at least, Jimmy said. The father's been carrying him through the tunnels. Marcus looked at the father, large, Dorvith, exoskeleton dulled with dust from the tunnels, standing absolutely still in the way that parents stand when a stranger is treating their injured child. He touched his translator. Your child is treated, he said in Dorvith. The medic is very good. The leg will heal. The father clicked rapidly. The translator said, Why are you here? Humans are not in the compact military. Why would humans come here for us? Marcus thought about this. We were asked to come, he said. We came. But why would you risk? Because your people needed help, Marcus said. That's enough reason. The father looked at him. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself to a horizontal position on the ground, all 6 legs folded, body down, the Dorvith gesture of deep respect offered to someone of greater status. Don't, Marcus said, stepping forward. Please don't do that. We're not. It is their tradition, Jimmy said quietly. Don't refuse it. It'll hurt his feelings. Marcus stood there, uncomfortable in the way that good people are uncomfortable when they're thanked for doing something they see as obvious. He waited until the father stood again. We're going to get your son out, Marcus said. I promise. He meant it the way Ghost Actual said everything, as an irrevocable fact. HFY. D. Reyes had been through the tunnel network 4 times in 12 hours. She had been underground more than above it. She had moved approximately 2,200 civilians through 400 kilometers of passages, routing groups through junctions and intersections with a mental map she'd built from the city's maintenance files and updated in real time as conditions changed. She'd taken 7 different routes, varying each one to avoid the Vorrkai tunnel search parties that kept appearing in the wrong passages. She was running on a combination of controlled breathing and sheer refusal to stop. At hour 14 she stopped for 4 minutes in a tunnel junction and drank half a water packet and ate a compressed nutrition bar that tasted like chalk and thought about Lily. Lily, who was 7, who still slept with the stuffed penguin she'd had since she was 2, who had recently lost her first tooth and sent her mother a photograph. This enormous gap-toothed grin, Lily prouder of that gap than of anything. The photo was saved on a device in Reyes's chest pocket. She hadn't looked at it in 12 hours. She wasn't going to look at it now. Not because she was suppressing something. Because she'd learned, over 10 years of high-stakes operations, the difference between carrying something and holding something. She carried Lily everywhere. But if she held her, if she brought that grin and that penguin and that gap-toothed joy into this tunnel right now, she'd want to get back to it so badly that it would affect her decisions. The civilians needed the version of her that was completely here. Lily would get the version that came home. She drank the last of the water packet and stood up and kept moving. Rachel Kim was on a rooftop, in a position so flat and still that 3 Vorrkai warriors had walked within 15 meters of her building without triggering her, because she had correctly calculated that their sensor systems registered movement and electrical field fluctuations and she was making neither. She had been in this position for 2 hours. She was the furthest out of any ghost operator, a full kilometer ahead of the main team, which made her the first person who would see what was coming. What was coming, she could now see on the thermal scope, was significant. 12,000 Vorrkai warriors, organized in a formation she'd never seen in any intel briefing. A wide, interlocking grid, each unit positioned to support the adjacent units, the whole structure designed to be impossible to bypass. They were moving in from 3 sides of the city simultaneously, the 4th side covered by the Vorrkai ships in orbit. She took careful notes. Position of each unit. Spacing. Movement rate. Weapons visible. Communications equipment. The large warrior she'd identified as a senior officer, probably the equivalent of a general, was carrying a command communications array on his back. She noted the command warrior's position. Marked it on her map. She whispered into her comm, "Boss. I'm looking at 12,000 of them. I've got the command structure identified." Marcus's voice, "Copy. Send me the map." She sent it. "Boss. Kim," he said. "Yeah. If we took out the command structure, they'd lose coordination," she said. 12,000 warriors without centralized command in a dense urban environment would take hours to re-establish order. Hours we could use. Yes. She looked at the command warrior through her scope. It's a hard shot. Define hard. He's moving. 1,200 meters. He's surrounded by approximately 40 bodyguards. And I'd need to be off this roof and gone before anyone could locate my position. Can you do it? She thought about this with the calm, systematic honesty of someone who spent her time doing math. Yes, she said. What do you need? 12 minutes of distraction. Something to pull the bodyguard's attention. Give me 10. Make it 11 and I'll make the shot. Deal, he said. The distraction was Alvarez. Which, if you knew Tony Alvarez, was not surprising. Tony had a gift for being the loudest thing in any room he occupied, and in the past 6 years with Ghost Actual had expanded this talent to include the loudest thing in any sector, district, or urban combat zone he inhabited. He drove a Dorvith municipal maintenance vehicle. He'd found it in a service garage, fully charged, and had spent 12 minutes and 17 seconds hot wiring it because the Dorvith electrical systems were different from human ones and he'd had to improvise, directly into the northern approach of the Vorrkai command position. Not fast. Not dramatic. He drove it at exactly 12 kilometers per hour, which was the maximum speed for a municipal vehicle in a Dorvith city center, and he activated its maintenance lights, and he broadcast on the Vorrkai communication frequency a message that Sethran had helped him record in perfect Vorrkai that said, "Vorrkai forces, this is a human commander. I am approaching your position to negotiate terms of your withdrawal. I am unarmed. I request a parley under galactic convention. It was a completely fictional premise. There was no galactic convention governing parley. The compact had tried to establish one 3 times and the Vorrkai had ignored it. But it was specific and authoritative and it required a response. The 40 bodyguards around the command warrior all turned to look at the approaching vehicle. The command warrior, his name was Drathmore, the same commander who had spoken with Vorrkai, looked at the small civilian vehicle approaching with its blinking lights and its absurd message about negotiation. Parley? He said to his aide. The human said, Parley, Commander. What is a parley? Apparently a request for negotiation under. And then Rachel Kim's round arrived. At 1,200 meters, even a perfectly placed shot is the product of 100 calculations. Wind speed, atmospheric density, target movement, bullet drop, the tiny tremor of the shooter's heartbeat and how to fire between beats. Most snipers and most military forces would call this shot extremely difficult. Kim would describe it later as, at the edge of my comfortable range, but within my actual range. The round was not designed to kill. Ghost Actual's rifles fired high-velocity, small-caliber penetrator rounds that were specifically designed to defeat bioceramic armor at the joints. The gaps Reyes had identified in the first hours of the operation. A kill shot would have required a direct anatomical hit. That was not what Kim was going for. She was going for the communications array on Drathmore's back. The round hit the array at the base of its antenna housing. The array exploded. Drathmore was knocked forward. Not down, not injured significantly, but forward, off balance, and the array was gone. The bodyguard spun looking for the source. Alvarez had already turned the municipal vehicle around and was driving away at exactly 12 kilometers per hour. Kim was off the roof in 45 seconds, into a tunnel access hatch she'd located 2 hours ago, inside and down before the bodyguards had identified anything close to her position. Drathmore stood in the street, the wreckage of his communications array on his back, and could not raise his forward units. The reconnection took 2 hours and 17 minutes. In those 2 hours and 17 minutes, the 12,000 Vorrkai warriors moved without central coordination through the city streets. They did not stop. They were warriors. They had their orders. But without the command structure issuing real-time updates, they defaulted to their last orders: advance on the civilian core of the city. Which meant they were no longer looking for humans in the outer sectors. Which meant Ghost Actual could move. HFY people, Marcus said into his calm, full extraction run. All available operators to the civilian zones. We have 2 hours, maybe less. Move. What followed was the most complex 2-hour operation Ghost Actual had ever conducted. 48 operators, split into 12 groups of 4, moving through the tunnel network in coordinated waves, finding the last pockets of civilians in sectors 7, 8, and 9, routing them through the underground passages toward the inner districts where the compact medical ships, now authorized to land in the protected central zone, were waiting. Sethran and Vorrkai, who were not soldiers and had no training in anything approaching this, ran with them. Vorrkai would say later, in her report to the Compact Council, that this was the moment she understood something fundamental about humans. She said, "They do not move through fear. They move through care." Every operator I saw, they were exhausted, they had been awake for 15 hours or more, they were operating in conditions that should have degraded their function substantially. And yet the moment they encountered a civilian, something changed in them. They became, I do not have the word in the translation system. They became focused in a way that seemed to give them energy rather than take it. As if the act of protecting someone was itself a source of power for them. She saw Marcus Webb carry an elderly Dorvith female who could not move on her own. The being was approximately 200 pounds and completely horizontal, and Marcus was carrying her through a tunnel passage, crouched, moving forward, talking to her the entire time in broken Dorvith that she kept having to correct. He apparently found this funny. She found it funny too. They were laughing in a tunnel under a city where 12,000 alien warriors were above them, while he carried her to safety. She saw Jimmy Park treat a Selmari child who had been injured by a falling structure. Crystalline beings required completely different medical intervention than any species Jimmy had been trained on, and he spent 11 minutes running through possibilities on his medical scanner while keeping the child calm with a card trick that required no common language. At the end of 11 minutes he found an approach. It worked. The child was carried to the extraction point by 2 of the Dorvith adults. She saw Alvarez, somehow with no clear explanation, arrive at an extraction point with 140 more people than he had been assigned. When asked where the extra people had come from, he shrugged and said, "I found them on the way." She saw Rachel Kim, who had just returned from making a 1,200-meter shot with 12 minutes of preparation, sit down with a group of Selmari children who had been separated from their families and apparently, play a hand-clapping game with them. The Selmari children had never seen a human and seemed fascinated by her hands. Kim let them examine them without comment, patient as stone. And she saw Diana Reyes at hour 18, standing in the main tunnel junction where all the evacuation routes converged, coordinating 60 different groups moving through the network simultaneously. Keeping it all in her head, making real-time adjustments as conditions changed, and doing it with the same steady voice she'd used in the first hour. HFY Vorrkai thought. I begin to understand what it means. At hour 22, General Sarah Okafor got her direct communication channel to the Vorrkai fleet commander. The fleet commander was a being named Grandshar Veldroth. He was, by the intelligence the compact had provided, approximately 400 years old, a seasoned commander who had led 11 campaigns. His face on the communication screen was massive, charcoal dark, the red bioluminescent veins pulsing with the slow rhythm of someone who was not currently angry. He studied Okafor for a long moment. You are human, he said. It was not a question. He had clearly been briefed. Yes, she said. The ones in the city. Yes. How many of you are in the city? Enough, she said. Our preliminary estimate was several thousand. I know, she said. That was intentional. He looked at her. You made us believe there were more of you than there are. We made you behave as if there were more of us than there are, she corrected. Which amounts to the same thing. A silence. What do you want? He said. I want you to leave, she said. Leave this planet. Leave this system. Take your fleet and go. He regarded her. His eyes, compound, full spectrum, were unreadable. You are asking the Vorrkai, he said slowly, to retreat from a military engagement. I'm asking you to make a decision before you lose more than you have to. We have lost 62 warriors in the ground engagement, he said. 62 from 12,000. This is not significant. You haven't lost 62 warriors, she said. You've lost 11 million civilians. You was still. The people your ground forces were sent to eliminate from Tharvan 4, she said. We've extracted them. They're out. Your forces are clearing buildings that are empty. You're conducting a purge of a planet that no longer has a civilian population on it, which means you're conducting a purge of nothing. A long silence. You're claiming you extracted 11 million people in? No, she said. Not in this operation. We moved the people from the sectors our team was protecting. The rest, the other 9 million, they've been moving since we started the operation. Because your forces consolidated to deal with us. You pulled sweep arms from the outer sectors to reinforce Sector 7. That left the transport corridors in the southern and eastern districts unmanned for 6 hours. 6 hours is a very long time when a species is motivated to move. She could see him processing this. Our orbital assets, he started, are currently watching 12,000 warriors walk through empty buildings, she said. Your orbital sensors are calibrated for large groups. Dorvath civilians moving in family units of 2 to 6 through tunnel networks below your sensor resolution. You wouldn't see them. Another long silence. The red veins in his face pulsed. You did all of this, he said. You're 73 people. We provided the distraction, she said. The civilians did most of the actual moving. People are remarkably capable when they know someone is holding the door for them. He looked at her for a very long time. The compact could not stop us, he said finally. 14 fleet engagements. Every one ended the same way. Why would we retreat because the compact fights you in space, she said. And in space you're better than them. You're bigger, you're faster, your ships are more powerful. That's true. She leaned forward slightly. But we're offering you a different kind of fight. One that doesn't favor size. One that doesn't favor power. One that doesn't care how many warriors you have, because we're going to make every one of those warriors fight in a corridor where they can only go single file. She paused. You've been in this city for 22 hours. My team is 73 people. You have 12,000 warriors. And in 22 hours, you have not taken one street that we decided you weren't going to take. He said nothing. The Vorrkai have never lost a campaign, she said. I know that. I know what that means to you. I know what it means to your culture, your history, your identity as a species. She kept her voice level. Not cruel. Not triumphant. Honest. I'm not asking you to surrender. I'm asking you to make a practical decision. Leave this planet. Leave this system. And take back this information. Humans are not the compact. When you come for us, and I know you will, eventually because that's who you are, we will not fight you in space. We will wait until you land. We will give you cities. Every city on every human world is a trap we've been building since before we met the compact. Every building is a position. Every tunnel is a route. Every human soldier is trained to fight at close range against a physically superior adversary. She let that land. You've seen what we do with 73 people, she said. We have 8 billion. The silence was very long. Grand Shar Veldroth looked at her. The Vorrkai do not retreat, he said. The Vorrkai don't retreat from the compact, she said. This isn't the compact. This is us. And we are something new. He closed the communication channel. Okafor sat back and breathed. 15 minutes later, the Vorrkai fleet began moving. Not away from the planet, not yet. They were reorienting. Changing position. Okafor watched the tracking data. 20 minutes later, her secure comm pinged. It was a message in Vorrkai translated, "We are withdrawing ground forces from Tharvan 4 for reassessment. This engagement is not concluded." She read it twice. Then she keyed her comm. "Ghost actual all elements," she said. "Vorrkai ground forces are beginning withdrawal. Do not engage. Let them move. The mission is complete." In the tunnels under Karavel, in the extraction zones, on rooftops, in basements, in corridors and rooms and maintenance shafts across Sector 7, 48 people heard those words. Most of them didn't say anything. Marcus Webb, sitting in the tunnel junction with a Dorvith elder and Jimmy Park and Big Sam Howell, eating compressed nutrition bars and listening to the silence of a city that was no longer being destroyed, looked at the ceiling of the tunnel. "Abyss YMJHY," he said quietly. "From this moment I am ready. It didn't mean this is over. It never meant that. It meant, I am here. I am present. Whatever comes next, I am ready." Jimmy reached over and handed him another nutrition bar. "You're welcome," he said. Marcus looked at the bar. "I didn't thank you." "I know. You were going to though." Marcus ate the bar. Somewhere above them, the Vorrkai were leaving. For now. The after is where most stories lie. The heroism is during. The cost is after. Ghost actual extracted from Tharvan 4 28 hours after insertion, aboard the ISS Unbroken, which had moved to within emergency extraction range during the final phases of the operation. All 48 operators and 25 support personnel made it out. 3 people had significant injuries, 2 broken ribs from explosion overpressure and 1 deep laceration that Jimmy had stitched in the field and the ship's medic reclosed properly. Everyone else had minor injuries, the kind that accumulated over 28 hours of continuous high-intensity operation in an urban combat zone. The first thing Marcus did when he got on the ship was sleep for 14 hours. The first thing Reyes did was call her sister in San Antonio and listen to Lily talk for 22 minutes about a project she was doing in school about butterflies. Reyes sat in the narrow bunk in the Unbroken's crew quarters and listened to every word. The first thing Jimmy did was clean his kit. Then eat. Then check on the 2 people with broken ribs. Then sleep. The first thing Alvarez did was find a functioning coffee maker. The first thing Kim did was write 3 pages in the notebook she kept. The one with the small cover, the one that went everywhere with her, the one that contained nothing she'd ever share but that needed to be written. The Vorrkai left the Tharvan system. They didn't announce it. They didn't communicate anything further to Okafor or the compact. They simply withdrew, the ground troops, the fleet, all of it, and disappeared into Vorrkai-controlled space. The Compact Council convened an emergency session. The session lasted 4 days. At the end of 4 days, the Council issued a formal statement that was remarkable for several reasons, not least of which was that it was the first time in 200 years of Compact history that all 42 member species had agreed on a statement without a single dissenting clause. The statement read, "The Galactic Compact formally acknowledges the contribution of the human species, represented by the soldiers of the Ghost Actual Unit, to the defense of Tharvan 4 and the protection of Compact civilians. The Compact notes that the methods employed by the human forces represent a fundamentally different approach to the threat posed by the Vorrkai, and that this approach has produced results that Compact military forces have been unable to achieve in 4 centuries of conflict. The Compact formally requests the establishment of a human Compact military partnership, to be negotiated on terms acceptable to humanity, at the earliest possible opportunity." Below the formal language, in the margin of the Selmari Elder's personal copy of the document, there was a small handwritten note that she had added for herself and never shared publicly until her death, 400 years later, when her personal archive was released. It read, "They were so small. And they were not afraid. They were not afraid of the Vorrkai who have terrified this galaxy for 6 centuries. They were not afraid of impossible odds. They were not afraid of the dark or the tunnels or the weight of 11 million lives on 73 pairs of shoulders. What is the source of this? What makes a species this way? I asked the human Vorrkai when she returned from the planet. She thought about it for a long time. Then she said, I think it is because they know they are mortal. Every human knows they will die. They know it in their bones. And something about knowing that, something about living with that knowledge every day, makes some of them decide that the time they have will mean something. It has to mean something. And so they make it mean something. I am 4,000 years old. I have never thought about dying. Perhaps I should. 11 million Dorvath and Selmari citizens of Tharvan IV survived the Vorrkai incursion. The city of Karavel was partially destroyed. The outer sectors would take decades to rebuild. But the people, the families, the children, the elders, the ones who had sheltered in basements and tunnels and maintenance shafts and waited, terrified, for help that came from the most unexpected direction, they survived. The Dorvath elder who had spoken to Reyes in the tunnel, her name was Kethvor and she was 120 years old, which was middle-aged for her species, gave testimony to the Compact Historical Commission a year later. She was asked to describe the moment she first saw the human. She said, she came out of the darkness with a light in her hand. She was small. Smaller than any being I had ever thought of as a soldier. She looked at 340 of us, frightened, in the dark, and she spoke as if the question of whether we would survive was already settled. As if she had already made the decision for it and it was final. I asked her afterward, much later when she came to Tharvan IV for the reconstruction ceremony, I asked her, were you afraid? She said yes. She said she was afraid the whole time. I said, but you didn't show it. She said, the civilians needed a person who wasn't afraid. So I was that person. I put the afraid part somewhere safe and I picked it up again afterward. I have thought about that answer for a year. I'm not sure I understand it fully. But I think it is the most courageous thing I have ever heard. Cross-Swords Part 11, The Reckoning. 3 months after Tharvan IV, Grandshar Veldroth requested a private communication channel with General Sarah Okafor. She accepted. He was direct in the way that Vorrkai were direct. I want to understand something, he said. Go ahead. The soldiers you sent. They are selected individuals? Special? Yes, she said. They are enhanced? Genetically, cybernetically? Some limited cybernetic enhancement for communications, she said. The rest is training. Training, he repeated. He said the word as if examining something he'd never seen before. 6,000 years of continuous warfare, she said. 6,000 years of humans fighting each other, refining tactics, learning what works and what doesn't, figuring out how to fight adversaries bigger, stronger, better armed than themselves. She paused. We did it to ourselves. To each other. For 6,000 years. And then we stopped. Mostly, and all of that knowledge, all of that understanding, all of those methods that we developed for fighting adversaries that were better than us, it was still there. It didn't go away. He was quiet. And your special forces, he said. These ghost people. They're chosen? From your general population? They volunteer. From the existing military. They go through selection and training. And the ones who could not pass, they return to regular military? Yes. And how does your regular military compare to your special forces? Significant difference, she said. Our regular military are excellent soldiers. Our special forces are something else. Another silence. I am going to tell you something, he said. And I would like you to understand that I am not saying it as a courtesy or a diplomatic gesture. Go ahead. In 600 years, he said, no species has ever made a Vorrkai commander request a private communication channel with an enemy officer. She was quiet. You are the first, he said. You and your 73 people. He paused. I have been thinking in the 3 months since Tharvan about what you said. About cities. About 8 billion humans trained in the way your special forces are trained. I exaggerated, she said. The 8 billion part. I know. But the principle. The principle, she said carefully, is real. He looked at her. I was told before this engagement that humanity was primitive. No. Unready for the galaxy. He paused. I want to revise that assessment. I appreciate that. I want to make something clear, he said. The Vorrkai withdrawal from Tharvan IV was a tactical reassessment. Not a permanent change of course. The galaxy is a garden and we are still committed to our. I know, she said. You're going to keep doing what you're doing. And eventually you're going to push toward human space. Yes. And you're telling me this because, he said, I want you to know that when we come, if we come, it will not be what we sent to Tharvan IV. It will be everything we have. And I want you to have time to prepare. She looked at him. You're warning me, she said. I am being honest with an adversary that earned honesty, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Grandshar, she said. Yes. When you come, if you come, I want you to know something too. Speak. The 73 people who were on Tharvan 4, that's one unit. One training cycle. We have 12 more. He was still. And every human city is a kill box, she said. Every tunnel network on every human world is a prepared battlefield. Every building has been analyzed for defensive positions, approach corridors, breach points. We have been preparing for an adversary like you since before we knew you existed. She leaned forward. We are also ready to be your friends, she said. The Compact wants peace with you. Humanity will work within whatever framework achieves that peace. But if you choose the other path. If we choose the other path, he said. Then you will find out, she said, that Tharvan 4 was us being careful. She let that sit. Caro, she said. It wasn't a word from his language. It was a word from hers. From the private language of her people. But something about the tone of it carried. He understood it. Now we move. He closed the channel. 6 months after Tharvan 4, the Vorrkai sent an official communique to the Galactic Compact. It did not offer peace. It did not concede anything. But it proposed a cessation of active expansion pending further evaluation of the tactical and strategic landscape. In diplomatic language this meant, we need to think about this. The Compact accepted the cessation. The galaxy had a temporary, fragile, possibly meaningless peace, one that everyone who understood the Vorrkai knew would not hold forever. But it was something. It was something that had not existed 3 months ago. Marcus Webb went home to Tulsa for 3 weeks. He didn't tell his parents what he'd done. He couldn't, the operation was classified, and even if it hadn't been, he wouldn't have known where to start. His parents were good people. His father still welded pipe. His mother still taught 4th grade. They lived in the same house he'd grown up in. They had no reference for 12-foot alien warriors or burning alien cities or the weight of 11 million lives. He mowed the lawn. He ate his mother's cooking. He sat on the porch in the evenings with his father, who didn't ask questions about the work and never had, and they watched the Oklahoma sky go through its colors as the sun set. On his last evening before returning to duty, his mother asked, "Was it hard? The mission?" "Yeah," he said. "It was. Are you okay?" He thought about that. The honest version. "Yeah," he said. "I am." She looked at him for a moment. "You know you can always." "I know, Mom." She nodded. Went inside. His father said without looking at him, "The people you help. They know it was you?" Marcus thought about the Dorvath elder, lying on the ground in the deep respect gesture. He thought about the father with the injured child. He thought about 11 million people who were alive who might not have been. "They know it was humans," he said. His father nodded slowly. "That's something," his father said. "Yeah," Marcus said. "It is." Diana Reyes went to San Antonio. She picked Lily up from school in a rental car, and Lily climbed in and immediately started talking and didn't stop for 45 minutes straight, a continuous stream of everything that had happened since the last time they'd been together. The Butterfly Project, a friend named Sophia, a movie she'd seen, a book about dolphins, the tooth, the gap was healing, the new tooth was coming in crooked, was that normal? A dream she'd had about flying. Reyes drove and listened to all of it. She didn't say much. She asked questions when there were spaces. She was completely, entirely, 100% present for every word. That night, after Lily was asleep, curled around the penguin, the gap-toothed grinned temporarily at rest. Reyes sat in the kitchen with her sister, Maria, who poured 2 glasses of wine and didn't ask questions and just sat there. After a while, Reyes said, "I'm okay." "I know," Maria said. "You always are." "I mean it this time." "I know. You always mean it." Maria looked at her. "Did something different happen this time?" Reyes thought about the tunnels. The 2,200 civilians. The darkness and the flashlight and the weight of the route in her head. She thought about Kethvor, 120 years old, lying on the ground in the deep respect gesture. She thought about what the elder had told the historical commission. She spoke as if nothing could stop her. "Something different," she said. "Yeah. Good different or?" "Good," Reyes said. "Definitely good." She was quiet for a moment. "I think we did something that mattered," she said. "Something that's going to matter for a long time." Maria reached over and touched her hand. Reyes looked at her sister's hand on hers. She thought, "SYMJHY. From this moment I am ready. But also, this moment is complete. This moment, right here, with the wine in the kitchen and the sound of Lily breathing in the next room, this moment is its own thing. Not a stop on the way to the next mission. Not a pause. An actual moment belonging to her, belonging to right now. She covered her sister's hand with her other hand. "I'm home," she said. James Jimmy Park went to Portland. He visited his parents. He played guitar on the back porch. He called his grandmother in Seoul, who was 91 years old and always asked if he was eating well and didn't understand what he did for a living, only that it was dangerous and that he kept coming home. He was eating well. He told her so. He went hiking on his last day, a trail outside the city high enough to see the Columbia River in the distance, the trees enormous and old and completely, absolutely, entirely at peace with their existence. He hiked alone, which was fine. He'd spent 28 hours in tunnels with hundreds of people. The solitude was not lonely, it was restorative. He sat on a rock at the top of the trail and looked at the river. He thought about the Dorvith child with the broken leg. He thought about 12 minutes of focused work in the dark and the specific satisfaction of a problem solved under pressure. He thought about the fact that the child was, somewhere on Tharvan 4, walking normally now. The healing would have been complete within weeks. A young Dorvitha's exoskeleton regenerated quickly. Somewhere in a city that was being slowly rebuilt, a child was walking on a leg he had fixed. He didn't need anyone to know this. He didn't need it acknowledged. He just knew it, held it. The specific, clean, non-transferable satisfaction of a medic who has done their job. He took out his guitar and played for an hour on the mountain. The trees didn't care, but the river looked good in the afternoon light. Tony Alvarez went back to El Paso for 4 days. He had a large family, 3 brothers, 2 sisters, 16 nieces and nephews, 2 aging parents who cooked enormous quantities of food whenever he came home and couldn't quite feed him enough. He ate everything. He played with the kids. He helped his brother fix a truck. On the second night, his youngest nephew, 6 years old, obsessed with space and aliens, sat on the couch next to him and said, "Uncle Tony, have you ever seen an alien?" Alvarez looked at the kid. "Once or twice," he said. "What were they like?" He thought about 860 Vorrkai warriors knocked sideways by a blast wave. He thought about a municipal maintenance vehicle with its cheerful blinking lights. He thought about Sethran and Vorith, 2 Ethrani diplomats who were not soldiers and had come anyway in their silver-skinned alien bodies and done things that surprised him. "Different kinds," he said. "Some were scary." "Were you scared?" "Yeah," he said. "Sometimes." "But you were okay?" "Yeah, buddy. I was okay." The kid leaned against him, satisfied. "I want to be like you when I grow up," the kid said. Alvarez looked at the top of the kid's head. "Don't," he thought. "Be something easier, something without the weight and the classified files and the things you carry home that you can't put down. But also, you might not have a choice. Some people are built for this. Some people look at an impossible situation and say HFY and mean it all the way down. And those people, God help them, are necessary." "Yeah," he said. "Yeah," the kid said confidently. Alvarez ruffled his hair. "Eat your vegetables," he said. "That's step 1. Rachel Kim didn't go far. She had a small apartment in Virginia, near the base, that she used as a home base between deployments. She didn't have family close. Her parents were in Chicago and she'd visit at Christmas, but she needed quiet more than family dinners right now and they understood. She spent her leave doing 3 things.